The classroom was quiet, too quiet. Not the ordinary kind of silence that fell when the teacher droned on about fractions and dates, but a deliberate, almost sacred stillness. Each student sat at their desk, pencils hovering over notebooks, eyes fixed straight ahead. Outside, the sky shimmered a dull gray, clouds streaking in unnatural patterns as if the world itself was holding its breath. Mara Lorne, 16, shifted slightly in her chair. Her auburn hair caught the light from the small window, glinting gold, but she did not move her gaze. In the back of the room, a boy named Talon Cross tapped his pen softly against his desk, the rhythm subtle but strangely grounding. Silence, Mara realized, wasn't oppressive. It was a choice. It had been weeks since the messages started arriving. Strange signals in the radio channels, faint blips in satellite data, reports of unexplainable objects moving in the outer rings of the solar system. Scientists called them anomalies, the news called them curiosities. But here, in this small, nondescript classroom on Earth's northern hemisphere, it didn't feel like anything ordinary. Professor Edrin, an older man with graying hair and a voice that usually rolled like soft thunder, stepped to the front. He did not speak immediately. His eyes swept over the 23 students seated before him, and for the first time in his long teaching career, he looked unsure. A faint tremor betrayed his calm exterior. Then he said softly, "They are coming." A murmur went through the room, but it was swallowed by Mara's shock. "Coming? Coming where?" she asked herself, though her lips did not move. The words were unnecessary. The truth pressed on their minds with a force that no explanation could soften. The door rattled with a distant vibration, the kind that felt like a heartbeat through the floor. Every eye turned instinctively toward it, but no one moved. The world outside the walls had shifted, yet inside they remained anchored to their seats. It was a classroom in name only now, Talon whispered almost to himself. "Do they know we're ready?" His voice was steady, but there was a spark of fear beneath it. Everyone knew the stories. Humanity had survived wars, plagues, natural disasters, but nothing had prepared them for the Armada. Something massive, something alien. Then Mara understood. It wasn't fear that kept them silent. It was calculation. Humanity's strength had always been subtle, invisible until it struck. They didn't leap at panic. They waited, they learned, they observed. That was what made them human. Professor Edrin finally spoke again, this time with authority. History will not remember the classroom. It will not remember the faces that sat still while the sky darkened, but it will remember what came next. Outside, a shadow fell across the sun. The air vibrated with an alien hum, a sound not quite musical, not quite mechanical. Windows rattled. Mara's heart pounded, yet she did not flinch. She looked at Talon. She looked at the other students, each face set in quiet determination. The first ship appeared, a massive structure, sleek and black, gliding above the horizon. Mara felt the instinctive human response, a mix of awe and terror, but it was tempered by something stronger. They had been taught to think, to adapt, to survive. Then came the second, and the third, a fleet impossible in scale, spreading like a dark tide across the sky. Cities would panic. Governments would scramble. But here, in this quiet room, nothing moved except the eyes, wide and alert. Mara closed her notebook. She did not need to write. She did not need instructions. Humanity had a way of rising to moments that seemed impossible. This classroom, this ordinary collection of teenagers, was about to become extraordinary. Professor Edrin placed his hand on the desk. When the Armada strikes, they will expect chaos. They will expect fear. They will find silence, and from that silence we will rise. The students leaned forward ever so slightly. In that instant, they were no longer ordinary. They were the first line of something greater, a spark of human spirit that refused to bow, and the sky waited. The sky groaned as if the heavens themselves were warning the world. Shadows stretched across the city streets, twisting familiar landmarks into shapes that seemed alien, and yet in the small northern classroom not a single student flinched. The silence had become deliberate, almost sacred, a prelude to action that the Armada could not understand. Mara Lorne's fingers tapped lightly against her desk. Not a nervous tick, but a rhythm, a code learned in late nights studying patterns, probabilities, and human resilience. She glanced at Talon, whose gaze never left the dark shapes above the horizon. Their eyes met briefly, a silent understanding, a promise that whatever came next they would act as one. Professor Edrin cleared his throat. They do not know us yet. They do not know what humans are capable of when they are quiet, when they watch, when they wait. His words weren't a speech. They were a declaration. The Armada, with its massive hulls reflecting a strange, oily shimmer, did not pause. Its engines thrummed with an energy that made the air feel alive. But Mara had studied the patterns of human ingenuity long enough to see that predictability could be weaponized. A warning blared across the city. Automated systems tried to rally civilians, but panic was muted here by the calm of the classroom. Mara stood first, slowly, deliberately, her eyes never leaving the sky. Then Talon rose. Others followed. Each student carried no weapon visible to the eye, yet each radiated confidence born from knowledge, intuition, and the quiet strength that had defined humanity for millennia. Professor Edrin motioned toward the holographic map projected in the center of the room. The Armada moved in formations, sleek as they were alien. "Notice the gaps," he said. "Notice the overconfidence. Watch the energy flow. Their ships are massive, but they lack subtlety." Mara's heart raced, but not with fear. It was excitement, sharpened with the clarity of purpose. Humanity's ingenuity was not loud. It was precise. It was silent. And it had survived countless challenges before this moment. The first alien ship descended toward the city. Its hull shimmered with a color that made Mara's skin crawl, a mixture of metallic green and black that seemed alive. And yet, as it approached, a strange phenomenon occurred. Mara whispered to herself, "They don't understand empathy. They don't understand intuition. They think survival is mechanical." She reached out, her palm hovering over the holographic controls. The classroom, equipped for advanced studies in human neural connectivity, allowed them to synchronize thought patterns. She felt Talon's presence in the network, and the other students joined in, their minds forming a collective grid of strategy and insight. And then, they struck not with missiles, not with lasers, but with pure human ingenuity. The first ship's engines faltered mid-flight. Systems glitched, not because of brute force, but because it had not accounted for unpredictability. Humans could think in ways no algorithm could anticipate. In the city below, lights flickered and panels hummed with energy redirected to the skies. Mara guided it subtly, almost as if painting, until the alien ship spiraled harmlessly into the bay. The classroom erupted, not with noise but with controlled action. Each student manipulated networks, sensors, and drones, exploiting weaknesses in the Armada's design. One by one, alien ships faltered, their confidence shattered by the calm, deliberate responses of young humans who had never fired a weapon in anger, yet wielded strategy and creativity as their mightiest armaments. Talon smiled faintly. "They're learning too late." Mara's eyes never left the sky. Each movement, each adjustment was measured. The Armada was powerful, but it underestimated patience, collaboration, and intuition, the traits humanity had honed across centuries. Professor Edrin's voice broke through the synchronized focus, steady and resonant. They came expecting fear. They found silence. And from that silence, we rise. The second wave of ships approached, larger, faster, more calculated. Mara's pulse quickened. She felt a shiver of doubt, a whisper of vulnerability. But doubt did not weaken humans, it sharpened them. The classroom became a hive of collective reasoning, a single organism in which each mind contributed, corrected, and improved upon the last. A flash of movement in the sky, the Armada's flagship. Massive, intimidating. Its energy radiated outward like a heartbeat. And yet Mara's voice was calm in the network, resonant in Talon's mind. "We know what they cannot see. We know how to adapt." The flagship fired. A brilliant streak of alien light tore through the sky. For a heartbeat, the city below seemed doomed. And then, as if responding to unseen hands, its energy folded upon itself, collapsing under the weight of precise human calculation. The Armada faltered. Confusion rippled through its ranks. In that moment, Mara realized something profound. Humanity's strength was never the weapons they wielded, but the will they carried. The courage to sit silent. To watch, to think, to act, not recklessly, but with purpose. And the Armada, for all its power, would never understand that. The sky darkened further, but this time it was not a shadow of fear. It was the calm before humanity's storm. The classroom felt impossibly small under the weight of the sky. Outside, the Armada's ships stretched across the horizon like black mountains, each one moving with a precision that made human hearts race. Mara Lorne stood at the front of the room, her eyes sharp, but inside doubt crept in like a shadow along the walls. For the first time she questioned whether silence alone could protect the world. Talon Cross leaned against his desk, shoulders tense. His usually steady hands trembled as he adjusted the holographic controls. The collective network hummed, a web of thought connecting each student, yet even the hive mind had limits. They were humans, after all, fragile, emotional, unpredictable, and the Armada, relentless and cold, would exploit every weakness. Professor Edrin moved slowly through the room, observing. "Fear is not weakness," he said softly, voice carrying the calm authority of years. "It is a tool. Learn it, respect it, and then use it. We will not fight blindly." The first casualty struck before any student could speak. A nearby city already partially evacuated was hit by a stealth strike, small, precise, and devastating. News feeds flashed across the holographic map. Fires, collapsing structures, screams caught in static. Even in their controlled silence, the students felt the tremor of grief. Mara's chest tightened. She knew the truth humans often ignored. Heroism was inseparable from loss. "We can't let this stop us," she whispered to Talon, though the network carried the thought to everyone. "We have to be better, faster, smarter." The Armada sensed hesitation. Its ships, enormous and alien, shifted in formation, probing for weakness. Mara could see the subtle signs, the flicker in the engines, the minute lag in response times. Humans had learned to read intention in seconds. Aliens in patterns and algorithms could not. Talon adjusted a parameter in the control grid. "They're adapting too," he murmured. "If we miscalculate, it could cost more than buildings. It could cost lives here too." The words hung heavy. Every student knew they were no longer just strategists. They were guardians of survival, protectors of a species that had survived plagues, wars, and famine, and now faced an intelligence that did not understand mercy. Professor Edrin's voice cut through the tension. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the act of standing when the world expects you to fall." Mara inhaled, letting the calm settle over her again. She could feel the collective heartbeat of the classroom, the pulse of young humans who had chosen to rise above instinctive panic. They were children, teenagers, barely adults, but inside them burned something older than time, the spark of survival, sharpened by history, honed by necessity. A massive shadow moved across the city below. The flagship descended again, larger, more menacing. Mara's stomach churned. Every instinct screamed for flight, for surrender, but she squared her shoulders. Talon mirrored her, and one by one the students rose. A silent army of minds braced against despair. They struck with precision. Not with weapons alone, but with prediction, intuition, and human creativity. Mara rerouted energy from the city's grid to disrupt the flagship's engines. Talon calculated attack angles and countermeasures faster than any machine could process. And the others? They adapted, improvised, and executed strategies that no alien algorithm could anticipate. The flagship shuddered. Sparks flew across its hull. It had underestimated one simple truth. Humans were unpredictable, imperfect. But in that imperfection lay brilliance. Then, the loss hit them. A minor miscalculation caused one of the alien probes to breach the city's outer defense, striking a civilian sector. The students watched helplessly as a building collapsed in the holographic feed, screams muted by the network but present in every mind. Mara's hands shook. She closed her eyes, letting the pain flow through her. Fear, grief, and anger mingled into a single clarity. Humans would survive, but not without cost. This battle would leave scars. Talon's voice broke the tension. "We can't grieve forever. We fight for them. Every life we can save counts." The network pulsed again, stronger now. Collective human thought, fueled by emotion, fear, and determination, was more powerful than any single strategy. Mara felt it, a tide of energy that surged through her mind and the minds of her classmates. They were not soldiers, not by design, but humanity did not need armies when it had ingenuity, courage, and the will to endure. The flagship reeled, struggling against their combined efforts. Mara's heart raced, but she did not let doubt take hold. Every failure, every loss, every shadow of fear became fuel. Humans could rise from ashes, from ruin, from despair, and they would. Professor Edrin's voice resonated over the network. They see chaos. They feel panic. But humanity rises from silence, from stillness, from the storm itself. Remember this, Mara clenched her fists. Outside, the Armada hovered, massive and unknowable. Inside, the classroom was quiet, focused, unshakable. They were humans, young, vulnerable, brilliant, and the universe was about to see exactly what that meant. And for the first time, Mara smiled through the fear. Humanity would endure, humanity would fight, and humanity would rise. The sky above the city had transformed into a canvas of chaos. The Armada's massive ships hovered like dark titans, their engines pulsing with alien energy that warped the air around them. Explosions punctuated the horizon. Cities burned and smoke twisted into unnatural shapes against the fading sun. Yet inside the northern classroom, silence reigned, deliberate and unbroken. Mara Lorne stood at the front, her auburn hair catching the last glimmers of daylight. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, sending precise pulses into the city's infrastructure, rerouting power and communications. Talon Cross moved beside her, adjusting energy shields, predicting alien maneuvers with a speed that even the machines behind them could not match. Together they formed a quiet orchestra, orchestrating human survival with subtle brilliance. Professor Edrin observed, his voice low but unwavering. They came expecting chaos. They found strategy. They expected fear. They found resolve. Humanity does not rise through strength alone. It rises through will, through unity, and through thought. The first alien cruiser broke formation, attempting to outflank the city. The students noticed the slight lag in coordination, a flaw imperceptible to alien sensors but glaring to human intuition. Mara's mind raced. They cannot adapt like we can, she said softly, almost to herself. They predict patterns. We create them. Talon smirked, a flash of youthful defiance. Then let's make a pattern they'll never forget. Mara nodded. The classroom had become more than a hub of learning. It was a nerve center, a brain directing the fight. They did not need weapons of destruction. Their advantage was human creativity, resourcefulness, and unpredictability. Every flicker of a light, every signal rerouted, every diversion created was a strike against the Armada that no brute force could anticipate. A ripple of movement across the sky caught Mara's attention. Alien drones were advancing rapidly, their sleek forms reflecting the dying sun. The students anticipated every angle. Mara guided city drones to intercept, not to destroy, but to mislead, confuse, and immobilize the attackers. Talon calculated energy surges that caused the cruisers to overshoot their targets, leaving them vulnerable to subtle strikes from the city's automated defense systems. For the first time, the humans saw the cracks in the Armada's armor. Their confidence wavered. Ships that had seemed invincible now struggled against a force they could not quantify. Mara's lips curved into a small smile. Humanity had always thrived in adversity, and now they were proving it once more. Yet the victory was not without cost. A wave of alien fire struck the outer districts. Holographic feeds displayed collapsing structures, and the students felt every pulse of fear, every cry of panic, through the neural network. Mara clenched her fists, forcing the grief into action. Every loss became fuel, every scar a reminder of what they were fighting for. Professor Edrin's voice rang out, steady and resonant. Do not fight for perfection. Fight for possibility. Every life saved, every decision made, every calculated risk, it counts. Humanity's strength is measured not in what we lose, but in what we preserve. Mara and Talon exchanged a look, a silent vow. They would preserve humanity, even if it meant exhausting every ounce of their strength, every spark of ingenuity, until the Armada understood that humans could not be dominated. The flagship moved closer, a behemoth that dwarfed even the largest city skyscrapers. Energy rippled across its hull, a heartbeat of alien power meant to intimidate and destroy. Mara's mind raced. They could not match it with brute force. They would need ingenuity, unpredictability, and subtle strategy. The tools humanity had wielded for generations against impossible odds. She directed city systems to form a coordinated interference field, creating phantom energy signatures to mislead the flagship's targeting systems. Talon synchronized with her, calculating the exact moments to redirect energy flows and exploit the alien ship's blind spots. The classroom pulsed with quiet determination, every student a node in a network of human resilience. Then came the moment of brilliance. Mara realized the Armada's communication network relied on precise signal timing, something rigid and predictable. By introducing controlled delays and frequency shifts, she and Talon created a cascade of confusion, causing the flagship and its fleet to misinterpret the city's defenses. Ships collided, drones misfired, and for the first time the Armada faltered. The students held their breath. Outside, the city seemed to exhale. Humanity had found its rhythm against the invaders, turning defense into strategy, fear into precision, and chaos into an opportunity. Professor Edrin's eyes gleamed. This is only the beginning. They thought they were invincible. They thought we would cower. They were wrong. Humanity does not bow to inevitability. We rise, always. Mara's heart swelled with determination. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the students understood a truth that could never be taught in books. Humans were extraordinary not because they were the strongest, but because they refused to surrender, even when the odds seemed impossible. The Armada recoiled under the quiet might of human ingenuity. And in the classroom, the students remained still, calm and unwavering, ready for the next move. The tide was turning. The sky above the city was no longer a mere battlefield. It had become a storm of light, shadow and sound. A war zone stretched across the horizon. The Armada's flagship, enormous and menacing, hovered like a predator circling its prey. Explosions punctuated the air, buildings smoldered, and the cries of those left behind echoed faintly through the neural network. Yet in the northern classroom, silence reigned, a calm, deliberate focus that could feel almost supernatural to any outside observer. Mara Lorne's fingers hovered above the controls, trembling slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of responsibility. Each pulse, each decision now carried the potential to change the fate of the city, the planet, perhaps even humanity itself. Talon Cross mirrored her movements, their synchronization perfect, almost instinctual. The network pulsed with human thought, emotion, and strategy, a collective heartbeat of resilience and courage. Professor Edrin stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tense air. They believe in inevitability. They think numbers and firepower define victory. They have never encountered will, creativity, and unity on this scale. Humans survive not because they are strongest, but because they refuse to yield. Remember that now, for every second counts. A wave of alien drones surged forward, sleek and cold, firing beams that could melt concrete. Mara guided the city's defense grid to intercept them, not to destroy, but to confuse and reroute them, turning the Armada's strength into vulnerability. Talon calculated energy diversions with unerring accuracy, turning one attack into a cascade of failures for the invaders. But the flagship's presence grew heavier, a suffocating pressure that tested the limits of human endurance. Its energy pulses warped the air, distorted city systems, and attempted to scramble the network of human thought. Panic, the most dangerous human emotion, threatened to seep through, but Mara and the others held it back. Fear became clarity. Desperation became resolve. Every heartbeat, every breath sharpened their focus. Professor Edrin's eyes gleamed as he watched them work. "This is the edge of tomorrow," he whispered. "Beyond this point, only courage and ingenuity will shape the future. Do not falter. Humanity does not falter." Mara's mind raced. She saw patterns in the flagship's movements, tiny inconsistencies, flaws no alien could understand because their intelligence lacked unpredictability. A thought struck her, wild but precise. The Armada could be trapped, not with weapons, but with the very systems it relied upon. She relayed the plan to Talon, who adjusted their strategy without hesitation. The network hummed with anticipation, every student contributing a spark of brilliance to the unfolding solution. The flagship fired a massive energy beam toward the city, a strike meant to annihilate everything below. Mara's pulse quickened. She initiated the maneuver, channeling energy through the city's grids to redirect the beam into the surrounding atmosphere, fracturing it into harmless arcs. Sparks danced across the sky, reflecting in Mara's determined eyes. The students held their positions, hearts pounding, but their focus unwavering. Then came the counterstrike. Mara unleashed the plan, a cascade of interference waves, energy redirections, and misdirections that the Armada could not predict. The flagship faltered, its engines stuttering. Drones collided mid-air, misfired, or were rerouted harmlessly into the sea. The Armada, confident in its power, could not comprehend the chaos its own calculations had brought. Talon's voice broke through the tension, calm but charged. "We've created the impossible. They can't recover. Not from this." But victory was never simple. The flagship recovered, adapting in real time, and fired again, this time targeting the classroom's network hub. Mara felt a pang of fear, sharp and sudden, threatening to undo their focus. Professor Edrin's hand rested on her shoulder. "Do not let fear decide. Let it sharpen. Let it guide." Mara inhaled deeply, letting the fear flow into strategy. She recalibrated the grid, redirecting the flagship's attack back upon itself. The ship convulsed under its own miscalculations, engines sparking, hull cracking, and systems failing in rapid succession. The Armada faltered as a fleet once confident and unstoppable struggled against the ingenuity of mere humans. And then silence. A tense electric silence broken only by the distant hum of city systems stabilizing. Outside, the flagship floated impotent, crippled by the very minds it had underestimated. Mara looked around at her classmates, at Talon, at Professor Edrin, and felt a surge of pride and relief. Humanity had held the edge of tomorrow and had survived. Professor Edrin's voice rang out strong and clear. They came expecting chaos. They found order. They came expecting fear. They found resolve. Humanity will endure because we do not surrender, because we rise from silence, because we create possibility when all seems lost. Mara exhaled slowly, her chest heavy, but her spirit unbroken. Outside, the Armada reeled, but this was not the end. It was only a glimpse of what humans could do when united, when brave, when deliberate, and for the first time she understood fully. Humanity's strength was not in firepower or size. It was in will, creativity, and the refusal to yield. The edge of tomorrow had been reached, and humanity had claimed it. The city lay beneath a fractured sky, bathed in the eerie glow of fires and the metallic sheen of alien ships. The Armada's fleet was staggering, disoriented and uncertain for the first time since it had appeared. Its calculated, unstoppable advance had met a force it could not quantify: humans. And within a quiet northern classroom, a group of teenagers and their teacher had become the nerve center of resistance. Mara Lorne stood at the front, her eyes steady, scanning the holographic map. Every alien ship, every movement, every fluctuation in energy flows was displayed before her like pieces of a puzzle. She felt the network of human minds pulse around her, each student contributing insight, strategy, and intuition. The room no longer felt small. It was the command bridge of humanity itself. Talon Cross adjusted energy fields in perfect synchronization with Mara. "They're adapting," he said softly. "But not fast enough," Professor Edrin nodded. "The Armada is intelligent, but it is rigid. It calculates patterns. It cannot anticipate chaos born of creativity, of unpredictability. Humanity thrives in that space between certainty and improvisation. That is where we strike." A new wave of alien drones surged forward, attempting to regroup. Mara guided city defense systems to intercept, not with brute force but with deception. Phantom energy signals, misdirected sensors, and synchronized interference that caused the drones to collide mid-air. Each collision sent sparks across the sky, creating a dazzling display of human ingenuity in action. Then came the flagship. Larger than any ship the world had seen, it loomed above the city like a dark sun. Its engines pulsed with alien energy, preparing a strike meant to obliterate every trace of resistance. Mara's chest tightened, but fear did not govern her. She had felt it, acknowledged it, and transformed it into focus. "Energy flux," she whispered into the network. "Divert, overload, synchronize. Timing must be perfect." Talon's hands moved with precision, manipulating the grid to create a cascading redirection of the flagship's power. Holographic simulations ran faster than thought, each variable accounted for. Outside, the city's systems hummed. Drones adjusted, shields pulsed, and the air itself seemed to respond to the will of human minds united in purpose. The flagship fired. Its massive energy beam tore across the sky. For a moment, it seemed unstoppable. Then, with a precise calculation from Mara and Talon, the beam struck the interference field and fractured. scattering harmlessly in arcs of light that danced across the skyline. The Armada's fleet faltered. Confusion rippled through its ranks. Professor Edrin's voice was calm, resolute, a steadying presence in the storm. Now, humans, strike where it cannot defend itself. Use every advantage. Do not underestimate your own power. Mara smiled faintly. She had the solution, one that required perfect coordination, timing, and trust. The students became a single organism, each thought complementing the next. They guided drones, city systems, and redirected energy flows in a precise ballet of destruction and deception. One by one, the Armada's ships faltered. Engines stalled. Shields collapsed. Communication lines jammed by the humans' subtle manipulations. Ships collided. Drones spiraled into the sea, and the flagship struggled to maintain cohesion. Humanity was not just surviving, they were dominating. A wave of cheers went unspoken. In the network, it was felt. Exhilaration, pride, and the unwavering certainty that humans could overcome anything. Mara's pulse raced, not from fear but from the thrill of victory hard-earned and the awareness that their greatest challenge had not yet ended. The flagship, now isolated, faced the full weight of human ingenuity. Mara's final maneuver was daring. She synchronized every city system, every drone, every subtle energy diversion to create a trap. The massive ship, powerful and precise, could not anticipate the cascading chain of failures that humanity orchestrated. Its engines flared, systems overloaded, and with a blinding flash it collapsed into the sea, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Silence followed the chaos. The Armada's fleet, leaderless and disoriented, scattered, retreating into the depths of space. Human ingenuity had won, not through brute force but through focus, unity, and creativity. Professor Edrin exhaled slowly, pride shining in his eyes. They expected surrender. They expected chaos. They found strategy. They found resolve. They found humanity. Mara looked around at her classmates, faces pale from exertion, eyes wide with the thrill and terror of survival, yet all radiating something larger, strength. She realized fully in that moment the truth of humanity. They were never just survivors. They were creators of possibility, builders of hope, and fighters in the face of impossible odds. Outside, the sky began to clear. Smoke still rose from damaged cities, but the shadows of the Armada were gone. Humanity had held the line, and the world, fragile yet unbroken, would see another dawn. Mara exhaled, her body weary but her spirit soaring. In the quiet classroom, the heartbeat of humanity pulsed strongest, not in weapons or technology, but in the minds, hearts, and will of those who refused to bow. And the storm had turned. Humanity had risen. The sky was no longer an arena of war. Dawn crept over the horizon, soft and gentle, painting the city in hues of gold and rose. Smoke still rose from broken buildings. Fires still smoldered in distant districts, and the scars of battle marked every street. But the Armada, the fleet that had seemed unstoppable, was gone, scattered into the black void of space. Humanity had endured. Humanity had won. In the northern classroom, the 24 students sat silently once more. Their bodies ached. Their minds buzzed with exhaustion, but their hearts carried a quiet triumph that no machine, no alien fleet could ever replicate. Mara Lorne rested her hands on the desk, eyes scanning the skyline through the shattered window. The horizon, though scarred, seemed infinite, full of possibility. Talon Cross leaned back, exhaling slowly. "We did it," he said softly, almost in disbelief. "We actually did it." Professor Edrin's gaze swept over the students, pride and reverence in his eyes. "You did more than survive," he said. "You reminded the universe who we are. Humanity does not bow to fear. Humanity does not flee from the impossible. Humanity rises, always." Mara's mind replayed the past hours, the fear that had gripped her, the weight of responsibility pressing on her chest, the decisions made in fractions of a second that had meant life or death. She thought of the casualties they could not prevent, the civilians lost, and yet she felt a surge of something deeper, a profound understanding of humanity's true strength. It was not in firepower, size, or speed. It was in will, in creativity, in the courage to face the impossible and act anyway. The classroom was quiet but not still. Each student felt the pulse of survival, the collective heartbeat of humans who had endured calamities for millennia. They were young, yes, but in this crucible they had become more than their years. They had become the embodiment of what it meant to be human, resilient, ingenious, and unyielding. Outside, the city began to stir. Citizens emerged cautiously from shelters, faces smeared with soot and sweat, eyes wide as they took in the destruction and the victory. Word of the Armada's retreat spread quickly, carried by human voices, communications, and the unbreakable networks that had been their lifeline. Humanity had faced annihilation and had prevailed. Mara looked at Talon. He offered a small, exhausted smile. "We didn't just fight," he said. "We showed them what humans are made of." She nodded. "We did what we always do. We survived. We adapted. We rose." Professor Edrin stepped to the window, looking out at the city. History may not remember the classroom. It may not remember the faces that sat silent while the sky darkened, but it will remember what came next. It will remember that humanity does not yield, that humanity does not cower, that even when all seems lost, we rise and we endure. Mara felt a strange serenity settle over her. The fear, the adrenaline, the grief, they were still there, echoes of what had happened, but they were no longer shackles. They were reminders of what it meant to be human, to feel deeply, to act decisively, to rise above chaos with courage and ingenuity. In the distance, the sun broke fully over the horizon, casting long golden rays through the smoke and ruin. Mara and her classmates rose to their feet, shoulders straight, eyes bright with the clarity of purpose and the promise of tomorrow. Humanity had faced annihilation and had emerged not broken, but stronger, wiser, and unbowed. And somewhere in the cosmos, where the Armada had once hovered with arrogant certainty, the first whispers of understanding rippled through the stars. Humanity was unlike any force they had ever faced. Unpredictable, resilient, and unyielding. Mara exhaled, a soft, almost imperceptible smile on her face. The classroom had been their anchor. The silence had been their weapon. And now, as the first true dawn of humanity washed over the city, she knew one undeniable truth. Humans would endure. Humans would rise. Humans would never be defeated, not by fear, not by power, not even by the impossible. And the world, scarred but alive, would witness the unshakable spirit of humanity. The silence had ended. The world had begun again.